Hey guys, what's up? So I'll be introducing a deck that I've built today. But before that, I'd like to talk about. I've been playing a lot of Dragon's Maid Standard, even before it was available to the general public with cockatrice, and I've seen a lot of cards that, as of right now, are sort of under the radar, but I feel will be huge, massive sleeper hits in the coming metagame. Um, just and some of them right now are going for almost nothing, and I highly recommend trading for or buying them now so that you can just bask in it when their prices skyrocket. One of those cards, Etherling. This guy is he's absolutely ridiculous. He's absolutely ridiculous. This is a card that blue didn't need. I've played with him in a few decks. He's basically reached the point where he's in almost every blue deck that I make. Uh, when he hits the board, unless I'm already at 2 life or something like that, I pretty much won the game. Likewise, when I play against him and he hits the board, unless whoever I'm facing is basically already dead, they've just won the game. He will be the control deck closer. You will see him in Bant control, you will see him in Esper control, you will see him in Grixis control, even if anyone decides to play it. He's just he's the control deck closer of choice, or he's the just the mid range deck. He's absolutely ridiculous. Like, let's if we took off these last two abilities, the ability to pump it, to pump its attack or to pump its defense, even if we took that away, it would still be a pretty ridiculous card. Its first ability essentially makes it unkillable. It's you don't turn this on. You don't play this on turn 6. You play this on turn 7 when you have a mana up to protect it, or if you feel like your opponent just has so much removal, you play it on turn 8 then. But once he comes down, that's it. I can't think of any removal in standard currently that stops this foolishness. It's ridiculous. I wholly I am a lot of people saw cards like Rurik Thar and Skylasher and Voice of Resurgence, and they all went, oh, they don't want us to play control. Control is dead. Look at all the blue counters and the control counters, and it's like, no, that's not it at all. Those are stop gaps at best. This is honestly, when I look at this card, this is I think to myself, this isn't a card that Esper Control needed. This isn't a card that even Bant Control needed. It's just the only way that I could look at a card like this and go, well, that's okay, I guess, is if it was as if it was two colorless and four green, because that would mean that someone was playing a deck that was deep in green, almost mono green even, and really just playing a creature like this. It just, with everything that blue has, it doesn't need this. Whereas if green got a card like this, I'd be like, okay. But with everything that and it's so easily splashed too. Just with everything that blue has, this is a card it didn't need at all. But right now, Aetherling is going for $4, $5, and I know that price is going to change. The thing is, how this works is that this card, I predicted the same thing with Sphinx's Revelation. Is that this card, or Sphinx's Revelation rather, some top name player is gonna take this to a tournament, or you're just gonna see this card in every deck list of all the top name players, and that's when people are gonna see that it's good, because that's the only time people ever People, it's like they wait for the top players to tell them what's good or what's bad, and then boom, everyone wants the card now. The price skyrockets. That's usually how this thing works. So, as more tournaments start coming and coming for Dragon's Maze, and as the metagame develops, this game will become a defining card of the metagame. Back in the previous core set, when I saw Thragtusk, I said this card will become a defining card of the metagame. And Thragtusk wasn't popular until like 2 or 3 months after it even dropped. Even like a lot of people liked it when it first came out, but the price was relatively low for a while, and there wasn't a great demand for it. And now it's like Thragtusk, you either love it or you hate it. It's become a defining card of the standard metagame. If you ask a legacy player what do standard players do, he'll say Thragtusk. This is going to become that card. This is going to become another defining card of the metagame, and I highly recommend that you snap up as much Etherlings as you can while it's at $4. Trade for it, buy it, whatever, because it's gonna pay off. It's gonna really pay off. Another card that I like to talk about, Rurik Thar, the Unbowed. This guy is as good as he looks. he really is. Just an all around standout beater. In Naya mid range, in Jund, and he's just, if you have the blue, if you have the green and the red and frequently get to 6 mana, he's just main board him, because he hoses Rug Flash, which is a deck I despise. He hoses American Flash. He hoses the control decks, and it's like the only problem you'll ever have is getting him onto the field against those control decks, and that's where Cavern comes in. With Cavern, he's a house with Cavern. I just drop a Cavern and aiming a warrior, and then boom, just go to town. And the only way that he, thing is, even if your control deck player is at 20 life still, and this guy drops and he feels like dropping to 14 is safe enough to get rid of such a house, it's still worth it on so many levels. And usually the lists I play Rurik Thar, and I have 3 of them, and it's funny, I'll have someone decide I have to get rid of him, I'll take the 6, and they'll drop him, and the very next turn there's another Rurik, and I can just hear them sigh. I can just hear them sigh. This card, I personally hate playing against Rug Flash decks and other just annoying control decks where more than 70% of their library is just spells, and this guy he laughs at it. I remember I played against a gutter snipe deck with this guy, and he hit the board and my opponent just conceded. He was at a good, I think, 14 life, and this guy hit the board and he just said, okay, scoop. It's just, this guy amazingly sells for $1 right now. This card goes for $1 right now. You can get it as cheap as $1, like $1.25 maybe. I don't see him being as defining, or rather as metagame defining as Etherling. He'll probably, if he picks up and people really start playing with him and see his power level, he'll probably go to 10 maybe, and that'll be about it, if he's lucky, which sucks because no, it doesn't. I mean, it sucks from the position of someone who really loves the card, like me, That's fine though, no matter what its price. I will continue to use Rourke because he has vigilance, he has reach. The one drawback of this card is that he has to attack each turn if able, And this is actually a pretty huge drawback because this happened to me both as the player and the opponent. I remember in the pre-release, I actually pulled one of these, a Rook Thar, and it hit the board, and he was at the position where my opponent had been teasing me with a Morgue Burst, because I was around 4 or so life, I think. They were teasing me with a Morgue Burst. They showed that they had it to me, just had to get to 6 mana to kill me. So on my turn, I draw Rurik. I swing, I put him down to about 5 health, and then I drop Rurik. And I'm just like, okay, if you cast a Morgue Burst, you die. So I'm thinking this is good. I've pretty much won this game. This is game 3. On the following turn, my opponent drops a Master of Cruelties, which first strike, death touch. And Rurik Thar has to attack into that. He has to attack each turn. Fable, and it was just one of the physically touching my Rurik Thar and making it attack into a Master of Cruelties was honestly one of the most. It made me feel like shit. So that part of him, I'm not really sure why it's there. Maybe they feel like he's too strong without it, or I don't know. But this guy's a house. Look out for him. If you play control, expect to see him. Another 6-drop I like to talk about, Sire of Insanity. This guy's in Rakdos colors, and I saw there was a lot of my friends and a lot of people who, when this card was spoiled, they said that it's absolute trash. Why would you want both you and your opponent to be discarding your hands? It seemed so situational and so just, they just harped on it and harped on it and harped on it, and it wasn't until, I felt that the power level of the card was higher than some people thought, but it wasn't until, again, the pre-release where it was used against me where I could just see how powerful it was. My opponent played, his only significant threat played that game was a Sire of Insanity, and before a Sire of Insanity, I was winning that game. If someone came by, looked at the game, looked at my hand, looked at the board, they'd say, "You've won this game," and just walk away. And that was pretty much the board until six mana. My opponent drops Sire. I'm tapped out. I have a Putrefy in hand, but I'm tapped out. And then we discard, and I just draw lands for the rest of the game. And my opponent just one card swings a game that was almost a sure victory into just a loss. And I think when I first started playing Magic, when I first started playing Magic, and I looked through some of the old cards, and I saw Armageddon. Armageddon is a card that destroys all lands in play. Let me see if I can. There we go. Destroys all lands. I saw this card and I said, why would you ever play this? This seems okay. You've destroyed your opponent's lands, but you've also destroyed your lands. What was the point of this? And this is of course when I was new to Magic, when I didn't really understand some of the really advanced concepts of the game. And so even outside of decks that don't play with lands, or decks that can make their stuff indestructible and it's sort of like a one-sided sweep. Even if we take those out of the picture and just have someone who's playing this in a deck that has no synergy with it, it's still a card that gives an advantage, because the time when you play it is when you have the advantageous board state. Say for instance, it's turn 4. You've played a bunch of 1 and 2 drops or whatever, and your opponent's board is still empty. You swing, boom, you wipe the board. Or rather, you wipe all lands. Now your opponent can't play. You can't play as well, but you already have a board. So now your opponent has to somehow draw himself enough. If he couldn't make a play by turn 4, this means he has to draw himself 4 lands just to sort of come back from the state. And it's similar thing with Sire of Insanity. You play this card when you have the superior board state. When you have a board state that's just even just slightly better than your opponent's, and you drop Sire of Insanity, and you both discard, now your opponent is in full top deck mode, and they need to draw answers, whereas you don't. You already have stuff on board. It's I mean, there are probably going to be times when you drop him and your opponent like top decks a Terminus, and now you're both in top deck mode, and your opponent comes back before you do, and you may lose because of it. But he's a pretty powerful card. He is. I've been playing with him in a few decks, and he's just, especially against control. When I have a Cavern named Demon and drop him, if they don't have something to take him out before the end step, that's pretty much game against 80% of the control decks I've fought with this card. If he hits and he isn't taken care of before the end step of the turn he's dropped, the game is sort of just taken over. I've never had anyone just magically top deck the answer that they need for him. And the final card that I want to talk about is Master of Cruelties. When this card was spoiled, everyone sort of, they looked at it and they sort of started to think about it, and a lot of people built some decks for it. And it's a very interesting card, and a card that you can build a deck around from many different angles. It's interesting because I just, people have been stuffing him and everything. I saw Grixis control deck that was playing this guy, and I think the best deck I saw that was playing it was a deck that just ran a bunch of removal, and just this guy. It was just like you had, by the time he swung, you just had no blockers because the deck was like 50% removal. Well, not 50%, more like 40 or 30, but still a high amount of removal. I've been playing around with him for a while, and the power level is very high. When you put him in the correct deck, he's just a house. And even when you just stuff him into a list that has the colors for him, he's still powerful because any whatever your opponent blocks with will die, no matter its toughness. And he makes a great blocker too. If you're just gonna hold him back and maybe swing with Vampire Nighthawks because your opponent, is threatening you, he's nice. I mean, I don't have the same applause for him that I have for the other cards because I haven't played with him as long. But I just know that I like him, and expect to see a lot of brews with him. Something that I've seen is a lot of people, like Maze's End, people think it needs to be on the battlefield for you to win the game. There's a popular misconception with this card. People don't read the very last sentence, where it's like a lot of people think the turn that he attacks, and he'll attack, he'll be unblocked, then he'll trigger, take the opponent to 1, then combat damage, deal that 1, and you die. And it's like, no. He takes them to 1, and he doesn't deal any damage this combat. It's like people read up to life total becomes 1, and in so much joy and happiness, their eyes just glaze over and they don't read the rest of the card. The Master of Cruelties is a lot. He's a lot like HIV, really. He's not gonna kill a person. He's just gonna take them to 1 life, and you'll have to find a way to kill him yourself. But it really shouldn't. It really isn't that hard to kill someone at 1 life in black and red. You've got Bump in Night. You've got Stensia Bloodhall. You've got Searing Spear. You've just got so many things. You've got Sign in Blood targeting them. You've got so many things. So let's go on to the deck that I wanted to talk about. So this is I've called it Jaya mid-range because it's 4 colors, and it's not quite Naya, and it's not quite Jund, and so I just decided to call it Jaya mid-range. So let's take a look at our creatures. Um, we've got our mana dorks, Avacyn's Pilgrim. I originally had 8 mana dorks in the list. I decided I didn't really need that much, especially with Farseek. I just left in Avacyn's Pilgrim, but good ramp, good ramp. There's been times when I've gotten off, I think, was it a turn 3 Thragtusk just with Pilgrims and I think it was back when I had 8 mana dorks in the deck, I think, probably. But yeah, you know what a mana dork does. We've got Hunt Master, 4 of, because why not? We have the colors. Thragtusk and Restoration Angel. I don't really need to say more. 2 of the big finishers, creature-wise, in this deck are Rurik, which I spoke about earlier. He's a 3 of here. With 3 Cavern's main board and another one in the sideboard. If I draw a Rurik, I will most likely get to play a Rurik. And he's just... Even if... Because I have a fair amount of non-creature spells myself. But the thing is, when he comes down, he's a lock. Like, I can decide if I can afford to play these spells or not while locking my opponent out. Unless they want to take big damage, you know? He's just... Even if you have a fair amount of... Because he affects both players. So even if you have a fair amount of non-creature spells, he's still worth a slot if you find yourself fighting a lot of control-ish type or high or decks with heavy non-creature spell counts. He's still worth a slot. We have Aurelia, the War Lady. Beautiful card, great card. I've just there's few times that I've played this card and been unhappy with the result, and so she's here. I think the curve for this is I don't have anything in the 3-drop slot creature wise, and Loxodon was in the deck for a while, but I cut him, and I think I had that was before Aurelia was in the deck, and I cut some of the Loxodons for the Aurelia and some other things, but I love Aurelia in this deck. She's just she's led wars, you know. Flying Vigilance Haste, just beautiful, beautiful. There's few times where she can. There's times when she's come down just herself, been the only creature on my board, and won the game a turn later. And there's times when she's come down when I have a few creatures already and just won the game instantly. It's nice. I like Aurelia. And Voice of Resurgence. This is another control hoser. He is, oh man. Right now he's the most expensive card in Dragon's Maze set right now. He's at like $25, more expensive than Ralzarek. $25 a piece. Mythic 2-drop. He's so good against even decks. It's surprising when you think of all the things that people do on their opponent's turn. Even decks that aren't control decks. You have Midnight Haunting, Advent of the Worm, Restoration Angel. Just so many cards, and the most beautiful thing about playing this card is seeing the immediate impact that he has on your opponent. The most beautiful thing about this card is watching a Bant deck or an Esper deck think twice on their turn and tapping out, or Sphinx's Revelationing on their turn and tapping out, just because they don't want to give you that counter, or rather that token, and even killing him gives you a token. So it's like one way or another you're getting something from this card. The one card that hoses this card supremely though is Pillar of Flame. But with that said, Pillar will be rotating out by the end of this year. Voice is just, it's amazing. I'm always just distraught when this thing gets Pillar of Flamed. I'm always just, because it's funny, when he gets Pillar of Flamed, there is no disadvantage for you. It's a straight 1-for-1. When he gets a worst case scenario, it's a 1-for-1. Worst case scenario, you break even. That's the worst case scenario with this card. best case scenario, you get a whole shitload of tokens, or you get a token after it dies, or it's like the worst case scenario is you break even with your opponent. This card is amazing. A lot of people have said, it's overpriced at 25. I don't think so. I think this will drop to 20 at the lowest. Unless everyone just starts playing pillars everywhere. This card's price isn't dropping anytime soon. And this is in standard. I've yet to see what people are doing with it in other formats. And I'd expect it to be great in other formats as well, but maybe I'd be wrong. So those are my creatures. Voice of Resurgence and Rorik Thar together just make headaches for control decks. Headaches that I love to watch. There was an Esper Control player that rage quit against me, and it made me so happy because I hate Esper Control. I hate it. I call it cancer control because it's so slow and it's so. I hate playing against the deck. I even hate playing with the deck. And these two cards it puts Esper Control players into the zone of rage quit. So 2 ready and willing. The reason why I splashed black is to be able to use the other side of ready, which is willing, and to use the first side of flesh and blood, which is flesh. These are 2 of the best fuse cards right now. Ready and willing is obvious. It's in any deck that I play that has the colors for this. I will put this in there because it's an amazing card. It's just it's sweeper protection. It's suddenly untap and indestructible. It's Vault of the Archangel. And the best thing is just to just swing with your team or your strongest members of your team. And it looks like and on your opponent's turn, your best creatures are tapped, and then they go to swing. You tap 6, fuse this. Everyone untaps. Lifelink, Death Touch, indestructible. It's nasty. It's really nasty. Let me go to Flesh and Blood. Flesh and Blood has been one of the finishers of the deck. It'll finish it. Sometimes at early mana levels, I'll need to use it as a straight removal. Just cast Blood on a Hunt Master, or rather cast Blood using a Hunt Master or a Restoration Angel's power to get rid of something. To get rid of a Planeswalker that's gone down low, or to get rid of a pesky creature. I'll have to use it for that. Late game, it's a straight up finisher, because here's what I'll have people do. I'll play a Rorik Thar. People will decide they'll take the 6 to get rid of it. So they take 6. Fine. The following turn, I fuse a Flesh and Blood targeting Rorik. So I put 6 counters onto my Restoration Angel, who now has 9 power, and then boom, hit you for 9. And if you're still alive, I'll swing at you for 9. This is one of the best fuse cards. I haven't seen anyone else playing this card, and it confuses me as to why. This is a great card. So we've got Domri here. Domri was I love Domri. I do. I love this card. So I will admit it may not necessarily fit in the deck, but I just kind of put it in there because I like Domri. And I mean, if throughout testing, I feel that Domri this isn't the place for him, then I'll take him out. But there've been games that I've won on the back of Domri alone, where if Domri wasn't there that game, it was a loss. So I mean, I sort of just forced it into the deck, and it sort of earned its spot. It's earned its spot there. So we've got 3 Farseek, not 4. In decks that I make, I usually only put 3 because the first Farseek is nice. You love it. You want it on turn 2. The second Farseek, that's nice too. The third and fourth, not so much. So I run 3 Mortars for removal. Maybe the deck needs more removal. I'm not entirely sure. It usually, if it does, then I might add in. It dawned on me that I was only splashing black for the two fuse cards, but it dawned on me flashing the black gives me access to Abrupt Decay and to some of the other, and to Putrefy, some of the best removal that I feel in current standard. So I guess maybe if I feel like the deck needs more removal, then I'm gonna add it. Land base is pretty typical. The only utility land, or the only color utility land that I'm using is Kessig, because I have 3 caverns, and I'm running 4 colors, so there just isn't room for some of the utility lands I would want, like Gavany or Vault. It's just straight Kessig because Kessig's power level. And the caverns that I need, and then just the lands. I think I have, how many black sources do I have? I have 5 black sources, I believe, and that seems to suit me well. Sideboard is three rest in pieces. Rest in pieces will shut down my Voice of Resurgence because it stops death triggers. It doesn't stop the first ability, but it stops the death trigger. Which sucks. I mean, and there's times when I've had to have both in my game, both in my deck, like against flash decks that run Snapcaster. Sometimes I don't want to deal with Snapcaster, and I'll bring in Rest in Peace, and then just take out one voice because I still want the voice to sort of give them a penalty for casting stuff on my turn, which they will do a lot. So, Rest in Peace will shut off voice, and I think alternatively I could run Grafdigger's Cage, but I just like having everything that Rest in Peace brings. So we've got Selesnya Charm for even. This is mostly for more. This is another removal card really for the remove exile target power 5 or greater. I bring this in against other mid-range decks or other decks that get big creatures that are hard to deal with. Well, that Mizium Mortars can't stop, such as Savage-Born. I played a Gruul Savage-Born Hydra deck where we just ramp and play huge Hydras. And I brought in Selesnya Charm against that. Selesnya Charm is great. This is really just removal. The last cavern comes in against straight up decks that are running mad counters. We have one Garruk, just a singleton Garruk. I think he comes in against control probably. I put the sideboard together, and I guess it needs some refining because there's never been a time where I've sided in Garruk, so maybe I'll fix that up. Bonfire and Gaze for more sweepers. Bonfire needs no explanation. It's Bonfire. Bring this in against weenie Swarm the Board decks or tokeny decks or whatever it may be. If Mizium Mortars may not be enough, or maybe I need to wipe a bunch of 1-drops or a bunch of 2-drops before I hit 6 mana to overload. Gaze of Granite is when I first saw this card, I was like, it's a poor man's pernicious deed, and that's in retrospect, that's quite the thing to say, because Pernicious Deed is one of the best cards ever. Okay, maybe I'm one of the best cards ever, but it's a pretty damn good card. So saying this is a poor man's Pernicious Deed it's the power level of it is still ridiculously high. I didn't give it much play because I felt like having that 3 before the X is so. I wish it was 2. I wish it was black green instead of black green before the X. But that would be probably have been too much. It would have definitely made it a mythic. But when I first saw it, I thought this is so slow. Like, what if I need to get rid of a Geist? That means I can't get rid of a Geist until turn 6. And unless I've played first and have been ramping like crazy, by turn 6 a Geist has me half dead or worse, you know. But where this deck shines is against tokens. A lot of token decks have been popping up. Junk tokens. The strange red white black tokens deck. There's a lot of tokens deck, and this deck for 3 mana, wipe your opponent's board. Against token decks, it's against token decks. It's essentially a 3 mana Supreme Verdict. Um, I played a token deck once, and I brought in Gaze of Granite, and I think I casted it where X equals 3, I believe. Yeah, I cast it for 6 mana, and I hit all their tokens. I hit their intangible virtues, and I hit what's that card? I don't remember, but I just hit everything. I just took their entire board for 6 mana. It was essentially a planar cleansing against a one-sided planar cleansing against that deck, because I didn't have anything out that was under 3 at the time. So in the right situations, this card is a ridiculous sweeper. But it's probably not going to see. I feel like it's not going to see much play unless we get more ramp in the format when Theros comes out and M14 comes out. Slaughter games. Sometimes you just need to slaughter. Great card. I have the colors for it. Comes in against certain decks. Gets rid of problem cards. So this deck right now, Jaya midrange is my best deck right now. If I had to go to a tournament and I had to pick one of the decks that I've built so far to take with me, this would be the deck that I took. It's just it. I think it has right now. It has a 80-something% win ratio, with a lot of the losses coming from me just making dumb mistakes. It's just it's more powerful than it looks. I feel like, well, like when I look at the list, I still feel like there's more I can do, and like it's like I feel as if it's not a perfect list, but when I play it, I just people just topple over. Like when I play it, it's no, it's definitely the best deck that I've built for Dragon's Maze so far, and I can't wait to put up some of the videos. So yeah, take care and snap up your Ether Wings. Snap those up like crazy, man. All right.